Episode 4 of the Cheat Sheet underway right now, talking wide receivers. I'm Sebastian Caballero. I got Austin, I got JT, I got Mikey Mike with me. What's going on, boys?
How you doing?
Hey, what's up, man?
Great day.
So we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. We're going to run through our overall rankings. We'll put them up on the screen. We got Michael Thomas in at 1, Julio Jones in at 2, Tyreek Hill in at 3, DeAndre Hopkins 4, Devontae Adams 5, Mike Evans 6, Chris Godwin 7, Kenny Golladay 8, Juju Smith-Schuster in at 9, A.J. Brown in at 10. That was quite a sleeper, huh? Amari Cooper in at 11, DJ Moore in at 12, Adam Thielen in at 13, Allen Robinson in at 14, DK Metcalf in at 15, OBJ in at 16, Cooper Kupp 17, Keenan Allen 18, Calvin Ridley 19, Tyler Lockett 20, DJ Chark at 21, 22 is Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs in at 23. We got a Dolphin that made the list. Devontae Parker in at 24. Michael Gallup, 25. Robert Woods, 26. T.Y., reliable T.Y. Hilton in at 27. A.J. Green at 28. Julian Edelman in at 29. And Terry McLaurin in at number 30. That rounds out the list. Guys, let's talk about the wide receiver position. How important is the wide receiver position in fantasy football?
I mean, starting off, it's super important, especially with the PPR leagues, and that's what we're going based out of. But when you're talking PPR leagues, you have to get enough. Well, I guess starting off, your best receivers or your best players on your team have to be that wide receiver, and then you also have to have depth because you never know who's going to end up being hurt. You never know who's going to end up having maybe like one of those up and down seasons. So you want to make sure you have enough players on your roster that's going to be able to make those catches because you guys got to remember PPR is points per reception. So as long as you guys get a lot of catches, they can make up for maybe a small amount of yards that they make. So that's one thing that you got to take a look at.
Yeah, it's like Mike said. I mean, PPR leagues, you got to look at points per reception. But one thing for wide receivers that I look at on how important they are is wide receiver twos. I mean, you can always go get your main wide receiver ones, but the ones that are going to win you the league and the ones that are going to get you those points to win those games that you need 4 points or that you're losing by 5 points to get you that over the hump, basically, those wide receiver twos are going to get you there. That's always what I look out for, those solid wide receiver twos, but that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, just like both of the guys said, with Mikey saying guys who got a lot of receptions early on in their careers, Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham had a ton of receptions, so they're always good fantasy picks. And then, like JT said, those number twos, even though last year he wasn't number 2, but Tyrell Williams was really good as a number 2 to AB, and then AB obviously left the Raiders. But, you know, just finding those players and like that no one's really going to think about that's going to be productive, and you kind of have an idea that they're going to be productive, that's always good to go with.
They're essential, man. Like a wide receiver scoring single digits will freaking ruin you, right? Like you gotta make sure you have big days from other guys, and especially in PPR, you're gonna most likely start a wide receiver as your flex. Unfortunately, due to supply, you really won't have that option to have a running back. If you do, good for you. So like you really need a solid wide receiver, and that could literally make or break your team. Like if you can hit, like you guys were touching on, the wide receiver twos, or even wide receiver ones that just fall in the draft, or these sleeper wide receivers that end up having an 80 catch season for over 1,000 yards, like that could be the difference of you being an average team or actually surprising some teams in your league and winning your fantasy leagues. But let's get into guys that you're looking at. We have our top 30. Let's start with the must-haves. Obviously, we know Michael Thomas. We know Julio Jones. We know Tyreek Hill. We know D-Hop. Who are those guys, though, that are on the list that you're 100% sold on this year?
I mean, one guy that always stands out, I should say always because he's only played 1 year in the league, but one guy that stands out, especially in the second year, is going to be DK Metcalf. That guy, to me, he wants to prove all the doubters wrong. He wants to make sure that he continues to just excel even past his first year. And a lot of people always say the sophomore slump and anything like that. I don't think that's going to be the case with DK. This guy's going to have Tyler Lockett on the other side on the same offense. You can't just double team DK and, not forget about Tyler Lockett. So the offense, and especially as well, I can't forget you got Russell Wilson as your quarterback. So you can't forget that you got Tyler Lockett on the other side. You got Russell Wilson that can always make plays. And DK will be, I would think, their number one coming out after this year. So look out for DK Metcalf after having 7 touchdowns last year. I'm sure he'll have an even better season this year, maybe eclipse that 1,000-yard mark.
Yeah, man. For me, the must start is Kenny Galladay. This man just absolutely took off last year. He does have Marvin Jones lining up on the other side, but other than that, the dude averaged 18.3 yards per reception. That was good for third in the league. He has big playability. He actually was second in most plays over 20 yards. And he was first among all receivers. That's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, whoever you want to catch the ball. 11 touchdowns. Touchdowns are huge in fantasy. That can make your day if you're having a terrible game and he catches a 30-yard touchdown right there. That's 9 points, depending how you guys spread out points. So honestly, I see Kenny Galladay having a pretty big year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to go with, I have him right here, DJ Shark from Jacksonville. He was having a pretty good year last year with the emergence of Minshew. And then obviously can't leave off my guy, Devontae Parker. He was one of the best wide receivers in football towards the end of the season. And I expect him to continue that trend going into 2020. So let's roll with that.
Well, if you've seen my quarterback rankings, you know how high I am on Dak this year, which must obviously mean that the Cowboys wide receivers are going to be big, but I am not big on Amari Cooper. I've been very vocal about that since we started the show, which means that Michael Gallup will be that guy to take off. I'm huge on Michael Gallup. He comes in at 25 for us. I believe he made my top 10. Basically, I just think he's going to take over Amari's role. Amari does not show up in big games. I know that, not everybody here agrees with me in that, but just the consistency of Michael Gallup towards the end of last year. He's going into year 3 now, another year of confidence in with Dak. And the Cowboys are going to air the ball out with Mike McCarthy there as a coach. I could see him, having 100 catches, over 1,000 receiving yards. Big year for Michael Gallup. That's somebody that you might be able to get, deep into the draft, maybe 6th, 7th round, and he could produce like a second round or first round wide receiver. So as always, we have those guys that are the ones that we already know that are going to hit, the ones that we love. But then there's also ones that we have to rank out of respect. You already know where I'm going with mine. I'm going to try to throw another one in there, another one that's not Amari or T.Y. And who are your guys' players to stay away from? Who's going to be a bust that made our top 30?
So that certain somebody on our list, I should say, and it's hard to tell people, I guess you could say, that's picking out in a fantasy league to stay away from, but at least take him with caution. That's what I want to say with this guy. It's OBJ. I mean, he had a down year last year. Maybe it was just because of the offense. The team wasn't really structured correctly. But as far as a fantasy standpoint, when you picked OBJ last year, you expected to have incredible numbers like he pulled up in New York. So last year, only having just he just only went over 1,000 yards. He only had 4 touchdowns last year. He seems like he has a different attitude, but I mean, it's still the same old Browns. So in my opinion, I think you want to stay away from him. And not as your wide receiver 1. I mean, hell, if you can get him a wide receiver 2, you know you got a good team right now. But take caution with him. I think you want to stay away from him as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm actually going to piggyback on Mike with a big name. This guy, it's not so much that he doesn't have the ability to do it. We've seen OBJ go down through the years, but Davante Adams, he is a stud, and I think he is a stud. But the thing is, I'm sure some people are going to have the argument that why he is going to be maybe a sleeper or a must start. And you're going to tell me, oh, well, who else does Aaron Rodgers have to throw to? That's exactly why he's going to be a bust. Who does Aaron Rodgers have to throw to? Meaning, if they can contain Aaron Jones in the backfield, then all they have to do is worry about covering Davante Adams for the rest of the game, and that's going to be the offense. And I don't see them having very high-scoring games either with that offense. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. We all know that. But he is at a decline, unfortunately. And we know he isn't happy in Green Bay, so who knows how that year is going to play out. So, yeah, my bust is going to definitely be Davante Adams.
So I'm going to keep it in the NFC North, and the guy from the Minnesota Vikings, Adam Thielen. Not many very people are talking about him, and his best buddy, Stephon Diggs, is gone. He's in Buffalo now. Got traded there in the offseason. And, I mean, he can piggyback off of him and vice versa between the two. So that dynamic is now gone in Minnesota, and it's going to be interesting. Now he has Justin Jefferson as a rookie, who is more than likely going to get some more targets and kind of fill in that role. But you never know. He could overtake kind of Thielen's spot and Diggs' old spot. So that's something to look forward to.
I like it. We're throwing out big names. There's a couple that I obviously, aside from Amari Cooper and T.Y. Hilton, I think A.J. Green and Julian Edelman are a little bit I think these are going to be busts. But I'm going to actually give you another big name, somebody that you will usually go in like the first 4 rounds, and that's Keenan Allen. He's lost Phillip Rivers, and I know it's weird giving Phillip Rivers credit in fantasy, but you have Tyrod Taylor, who's serviceable, who's okay, and then you have Justin Herbert, who might not even play this year. Assuming that it's Tyrod Taylor, you got to see this decline in with Keenan Allen. How are the Chargers going to be offensively? Are they just going to run the ball? I mean, do you see Tyrod Taylor producing, offensive numbers like Phillip Rivers has in the past? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a little bit more efficient. But because of that, I think there's a major decline coming in for Keenan Allen. We have him listed at 18, but it wouldn't surprise me if he drops lower than that. A lot of big names, man. There's a lot of caution with some of those. I like the Davante Adams pick, like the Adam Thielen pick, like the OBJ pick. Oh man, we're insulting some people. These are guys that are gonna go like in the first 2 fucking rounds. But let's talk about guys that won't go in the first 2 rounds. Let's talk about guys that are gonna fall to you at 8, 9, 10, even some guys that may go undrafted. Guys that we did not list in our top 30 that you guys think could ultimately end up as a top 15, top 20 receiver.
So on my list, I had him, but he's not on our overall list. And Sebastian, you know where I'm going with this. From my team, from the Steelers, somebody that's not on this overall team or overall list, is Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh. The man is going to be on a tear. If you can pick him up in the later rounds, I have a feeling that a lot of people might just let him slip. He's coming back on this offense. Big Ben is back. He looks like his old self. You got Juju. You have the complete offense with the Pittsburgh over there. And Deontay Johnson actually led all the rookies last year in catches. And he did that with his second string and a third string quarterback. So what makes you think that he's not going to do the same thing his second year with Big Ben back? So Deontay Johnson, he could blow the top off the defense anytime, any given time. He did it in Toledo against Miami. I've seen it happen. And I've seen it happen last year that he can do it with the NFL defense. So that's my first, I guess you could say, sleeper. And then my second sleeper is going to be the rookie out of Oakland. It's going to be Henry Ruggs. There was a report that just came out that he's going to actually take over AB's role. So look for him. This probably, if I'm not mistaken, the fastest guy in the combine, the fastest guy in college coming out of, obviously coming out of college, but going into the NFL, the man will catch balls. He will blow past everybody. He look for him to have a really good offensive year, especially as a rookie in Oakland.
Yeah, for my first sleeper, I'm going to have Michael Gallup. I know Sebastian talked about him earlier, but I mean, he wasn't in my top 10 like Sebastian, but I think he is going to have a huge year. The dude had 113 targets last year. I can only see that increase, even though that's a pretty big number. That's only going to increase because I think Amari Cooper, he's hit his peak as a wide receiver. You already know what you're getting out of him. You know you're not going to get anything more out of him. But with Michael Gallup, there's still room for improvement. So I think Dak and the offense is going to try to find exactly how much potential they can get out of Michael Gallup this year. So that's definitely somebody I think that you can steal in those later rounds. But one guy that he's not going to be there in the later rounds, but I would pick him in the early rounds is Calvin Ridley. I know we did have him in the top 30, but I do think this guy will end up being a top 10, possibly top 5 wide receiver this year. Just for the simple fact that if you look at his stats from last year, for the total stats, he has the identical stats of his first year in 3 less games. So if you get a full year of Calvin Ridley, just remember, he is lining up at one of the best wide receivers in the last 10 years that we've seen, Julio Jones. The dude's 31. All right, you got to start thinking, when is this guy going to decline? Less targets his way, and where's it going to go? It's not going to go to running back. It's not going to go to tight end. It's going to be on the other side to their next star, Calvin Ridley. I think this year is the year that Atlanta is going to seek him out and see what they have exactly for that franchise wide receiver. So I definitely think Calvin Ridley is going to have a huge year this year.
So I'm going to take it to the Ravens, and I'm going to talk about Marquise Hollywood Brown. And he's not in our top 30 overall, but he was 26 for me. And let's be honest, who is a notable wide receiver on the Ravens? Pretty much nobody but him. Honestly, Miles Boykins, Devin. Well, besides Willie Snead, that's the only name that you can really say off the top of your head. Obviously, they have good tight ends like Mark Andrews, but they just got rid of Hayden Hurst. So the offensive production of passing the ball is going to have to go around more. And, I mean, he got 11 targets in the playoffs against Titans in a game that, you know, they're trying to win. Obviously, it's a playoff game. So just leading into the next year, he's going to have way more production on for himself, and he's going to have a good sophomore season.
So I always like to go rookies when it comes to sleepers. I'm going to start off with Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers. They got George Kittle. I don't know why I keep saying Greg Kittle. George Kittle, who is, I believe, just finalized his contract. But other than that, they really don't have any healthy receivers. Deebo Samuel went down earlier in the year. He might be back halfway through. But I think Brandon Ayuk, they thought really highly of him. You heard it in the draft. You know, that was their number one guy from the go. With Kyle Shanahan and that offense and what they were able to do, like I really see him being really involved. I could see him replacing Emmanuel Sanders. And we saw what Emmanuel Sanders was able to do once he got traded out there to San Francisco. Speaking of a former Bronco, let's talk about a current Bronco, and the other sleeper for me is Jerry Jeudy. I was surprised that he fell in the draft and got to the Broncos at 15. I think pound for pound, he was the best available receiver in the draft. He was the most complete receiver. Now, his only downside is that he's in a team with weapons, right? He's got Courtland Sutton, who's kind of established himself as a number one last year. They did draft another receiver, and they have Noah Fant there, who could potentially be a top 10 tight end. Drew Lock kind of figured things out there the last 5 games of the season when he kind of got in. He produced very well. So I think talent-wise is there. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a consistent 10 to 15 points. But at the same time, this is somebody that people are talking about, you know, as far as Alabama wide receivers, on that Amari Cooper, Julio Jones type level. Like, not Julio Jones, but a little bit better than Amari Cooper coming out of the draft. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on here. So when we talk about wide receivers, the drafts are all coming up. There's drafts going on right now. Let's talk about drafting wide receivers. JT's been very vocal about drafting, keeping an eye on the number two wide receivers. But how do you guys go about drafting receivers? Especially if you're picking, in that middle to late first round. If you end up getting a running back early, like how do you guys go about drafting your wide receivers?
I mean, when it comes to me, I've had this, I guess, layout or this game plan every time I do fantasy. Since it is PPR, and I can't stress that fact enough. I always try to make sure my first players, or at least my first playmakers, position players, will be a wide receiver. I mean, there's so many at this point, especially this year. I realize that there's so many wide receivers that can be starters on any single team, and like you can go down past the 30s. Like we only did a list of 30, but there's literally I'll say maybe 60 receivers like right off the bat that for a fact that can actually produce on your team. So, like I guess don't be afraid. Do your research on it. But if it was up to me, I'm picking receivers first. I'll go with my second pick as a running back, but make sure that you have a complete receiver if you're going to pick him in the first round. You make sure that he's going to get the catches. He's going to be a playmaker when he catches the touchdowns. If you can't get that running back or anything like maybe that McCaffrey or anything like that, but just if you're going to go wide receiver, make sure that first one is your playmaker. And then, like I said earlier in the beginning of the podcast, make sure you have depth. You can't go wrong with having too many receivers on your team.
For me, honestly, I'm not going to go past the fourth round without having two stud wide receivers, just because in one of those rounds you maybe are going to get your second running back, or if George Kittle or Kelsey falls on your lap, I'm going to take them for sure if it's like maybe second round, late second round, something like that. But for sure, you got to get those stud receivers because they're going to carry your team. And it is not a bad thing to have 3 stud receivers or 4 stud receivers, and having that headache of who's going to be your flex week in, week out, that's a good problem to have. And just remember, later on in the season, not everybody's going to be healthy. So that means your wide receivers or your running backs, and you can use one of those as trade chips. Go get yourself a good running back. Go get yourself a good tight end. Maybe your tight end sucks, or you want a complete team. So definitely throughout the draft, that's something you want to look for. And those sleepers that we were talking about, those are going to be important later on in the end rounds.
Yeah, definitely what JT said. I mean, by the fourth round, you should have maybe 1, maybe 2 running backs. And then if not, depending on how the draft has been going for you, instead of having those 2 running backs, you have 2 wide receivers, maybe 1 tight end in there, and within those fourth rounds, So definitely just stockpiling wide receivers, running backs. Like those are the key players, and definitely in PPR leagues, like the ones we've been speaking about mostly. I mean, they mostly get the receptions. Obviously, those stud tight ends, you got to pick up with those guys. But definitely having a lot of wide receivers is not a problem that you don't want to have.
Yeah, and to Mikey's point, there's a lot of guys that we left out. And I'm talking about like big names, Jarvis Landry. We're talking about Tyler Boyd. These are guys that are perennial top 25 receivers. But obviously because of, different circumstances, we feel strongly about the list that we do. But there are options for you. And some of the guys that we even listed, like, you could see McLaurin kind of falling later on in the draft as well. So there's definitely options for you, but you definitely want to secure, at least for me. I mean, I prioritize running back. I would like to get that first running back, but unless if I'm, say, picking like 7th and my options are, Joe Mixon or getting, a Michael Thomas or a Julio Jones or a Tyreek Hill, maybe I pull the trigger on a wide receiver instead of getting that running back and then look for the running back. at a later time. You always want to try to have like that one wide receiver that you just like set it and forget it. That's how they say. Like he's somebody that could just get you 20 points. If you had Michael Thomas last year, like that was a gift from God. Like that was just automatic 20 points, 30 points, whatever it was. If you could get one of those, then you're pretty much set right there. You're halfway through a victory, and then obviously you want to try to have some complementary players. And like the guys said, you want to load up on receivers. Because you just never know. There's injuries. There's also trade possibilities that you can kind of squeeze out of there in case you are in need of a position. For example, running back or tight end. There will be teams that are lacking wide receivers that you can hustle. Your third best wide receiver would probably be somebody else's number one receiver, and you could probably get a pretty good deal in return for somebody that's not your first or second best option in there. Guys, we have about 3 minutes. Final thoughts.
I mean, just anybody who's picking, don't worry. Don't get mad if you miss out on the guy you really wanted. It doesn't matter. This is fantasy. Anything can ever happen. There are a lot of receivers this year. So if you miss out on the guy that you wanted, don't worry about it. Next round, I promise you there's going to be someone that's, if not matches his talent or matches his skill base with points and everything like that, you're probably going to end up picking maybe one or two more people that adds you depth onto your chart and then onto your roster. And then on top of that, don't worry about it, because once you got your whole entire team, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that people are going to forget about, and you're going to be able to pick them up in the free agent list and the waiver wire. So you guys will be good.
Yeah, actually, I don't know how you guys feel about what I'm about to say, but I was going through the top 30 list and who I want to put where, and I started thinking about who I want to take. And honestly, the duo in Tampa Bay, I would not mind at all them being my wide receivers, even though they're on the same team. And in years past, I've always tried to stay away from that just because there's always going to be one guy that has a good game and one guy that doesn't. But as much as I'm low on Tom Brady and as much as I'm low on Gronk, I don't see Mike Evans and Chris Godwin not having a good season. I think they're both going to have solid games every single game. So I feel strongly that if that's a duo that you can get on your lineup, then go for it. If it's there, take it. And the second thing, I want to thank you guys, and I want to thank God, just because nobody said Ty Hilton in a good way today. I would have lost my shit if you guys said Ty Hilton was a sleeper. That's all I got to say.
Well, you spoke too soon, JT. No, I'm kidding. But honestly, just with all you guys drafting, just make sure that you guys, like Mikey said, be patient. You're going to find the right guy no matter what it is. There's so many wide receivers. There's so many running backs. The position that is a premium is obviously tight end and quarterback. Those are the two premium positions in the league that you can't get too many great guys there. But wide receiver, running back, there's a boatload of talent there. And, just be patient and you guys will get your great players there.
I've been saying this every episode, and I say it for a reason. This is going to be a very stressful time. It's a very stressful process, so you need to have patience. And what I will say is that if you're one of those people that does not have patience, here are some people that you need to stay away from. Amari Cooper. Please stay away from Amari Cooper. Stay away from OBJ. Even though I don't think he'll have a bad year, stay away from Calvin Ridley. Stay away from Allen Robinson. Stay away from Stephon Diggs. Stay away from T.Y. Hilton. Stay away from A.J. Green. Now, this isn't saying don't draft them. I'm just saying you need to have patience. You got to handle them with care because they will ruin a lot of your Sundays. They will cause probably some future health issues because of their performances or their inconsistencies. So just be patient, and that's all I got. Guys, see you next week. Or actually, no, we're going to be back here in a couple days to go over tight ends, defenses, and kickers. So we'll see you next time. Great episode today. Talk some wide receivers. Shout out to the boys for joining me here. A lot of great stuff that was discussed today. We will be doing tight ends, defenses, and kickers in a few days. We know that we've been pretty much absent here for a week and a half. There's been a lot of things going on, so we apologize for that. But we are back and should be back every single week from now till the end of the regular season. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all platforms: YouTube, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe, like, share, follow us on all platforms. As always, don't forget about our partnership with the Thrive Fantasy app. If you play fantasy football, which if you're listening to this episode, you absolutely do, here's a chance for you to win some money through the Thrive Fantasy app. If you love fantasy sports, this is the app for you. Go ahead, sign up today using our code TOOL, TOOL. Once again, that is TOOL, TOOL, when you sign up for the Thrive Fantasy app. You do that, I'm going to give you 20 instant bucks. 20 instant bucks added on top of whatever you are signing up with. 20 instant bucks to your Thrive Fantasy app account. That's $20 free. So if you sign up, it's got to be a minimum of $20. If you sign up with $20, you get an additional 20 bucks on top of that. If you sign up with 100, you get $20 on top of that as well. Sign up. Heck of a deal right now for you guys. They got a lot of good deals going on. Do that ASAP. That's all from me. Until next time, I'm signing off.